Welcome back to Grimdark Bites, where we explore the darkest corners of Warhammer 40,000 in bite-sized chunks. I'm your host, the Lorelord, and today we're telling the tale of perhaps the most physically imposing space marine who ever lived. Picture this: a warrior so massive that standard power armor couldn't contain him. So strong that he could crush an orc's skull with his bare hands. So hungry that he could eat an entire grox in one sitting. This is the legend of Haegr the Mountain, a space wolf whose appetite for battle was matched only by his appetite for, well, everything else. But Haegr's story isn't just about size. It's about brotherhood, sacrifice, and what happens when even the superhuman limits of the Adeptus Astartes aren't enough to contain the spirit within. Haegr began life like any other space wolf, as a youth on the death world of Fenris, where survival itself is a daily battle against impossible odds. But even among the hardy tribes of Fenris, Haegr stood apart. Not just for his size, which was impressive even before his transformation into an Astartes, but for his legendary appetite. The stories say that during his trial feasts, the ritual celebrations where potential Space Marine recruits prove their worthiness, Haegr consumed enough food for 10 men and still asked for seconds. When the wolf priests came to test his mettle, they found a young giant who could outfight, outdrink, and out-eat anyone in his tribe. His transformation into a space marine should have been the end of his growth, but Haegr defied even the sacred gene seed of Leman Russ. Where most space marines stand between 7 and 8 feet tall, Haegr continued growing until he towered over even his battle brothers at nearly 10 feet in height. His bulk was so immense that the tech marines had to forge custom power armor just to contain his massive frame. But here's what makes Haegr truly remarkable. Despite his intimidating size, he was beloved by his brothers. In a chapter known for its fierce warriors and barely controlled savagery, Haegr was a gentle giant whose booming laugh could fill an entire great hall. He proved that among the space wolves, it wasn't just your ability to kill that mattered, but your ability to live. To understand Haegr, you have to understand his relationship with food. This wasn't just about sustenance. It was about celebration, brotherhood, and the very soul of what it means to be a space wolf. Haegr's eating habits were legendary, even among a chapter known for its feasts. He could consume an entire roasted grox, a creature the size of a rhinoceros, and follow it up with barrels of emjod. His fellow space wolves would gather just to watch him eat, taking bets on how much he could consume before even his enhanced metabolism reached its limits. But this wasn't gluttony in any recognizable sense. For Haegr, food was communion. Every meal was a celebration of survival, every feast a testament to the brotherhood of the pack. He understood something fundamental about space wolf culture that even some of his battle brothers missed, that the rituals of eating and drinking together weren't just tradition, they were what separated the wolves from the cold, emotionless killing machines that other chapters sometimes became. The Fenrisian sagas speak of warriors whose appetites matched their prowess in battle, and Haegr embodied this ideal perfectly. He ate like a king because he fought like a legend, and he fought like a legend because he understood what he was fighting for, not just humanity's survival, but humanity's capacity for joy, for fellowship, for the simple pleasures that make existence worthwhile. His brothers would joke that Haegr could smell a feast from 3 systems away, but they said it with affection. In a galaxy where pleasure was often seen as weakness and joy was considered a luxury the Imperium couldn't afford, Haegr represented something precious, the understanding that what makes us human is worth preserving. Haegr's greatest fame came not from his solo exploits, but from his partnership with Ragnar Blackmane, one of the most legendary space wolves in the chapter's history. These two warriors represented opposite ends of the space wolf spectrum, yet their friendship became the stuff of legend. Where Ragnar was quick, aggressive, and driven by barely controlled fury, Haegr was steady, methodical, and surprisingly thoughtful. Ragnar fought like a lightning strike. Haegr fought like an avalanche. Together they were unstoppable. Ragnar's speed and cunning perfectly complemented by Haegr's overwhelming strength and tactical awareness. Their adventures took them across the galaxy, from the demon-infested hive cities of Armageddon to the gene-stealer-haunted depths of space hulks. In every battle, Haegr proved that his size wasn't just for show. He could tear apart enemy vehicles with his bare hands, use fallen enemies as improvised weapons, and clear entire corridors of foes simply by charging through them. But perhaps most remarkably, Haegr served as Ragnar's conscience and counselor. When the young Bloodclaw's anger threatened to overwhelm his judgment, it was Haegr who provided the voice of wisdom. When Ragnar's pride led him into dangerous situations, Haegr was there to watch his back. The mountain understood that being the biggest and strongest didn't mean you had to prove it constantly. Sometimes the greatest strength was knowing when not to use your power. Their bond transcended the typical brotherhood of space marines. They were packmates in the truest sense, each making the other stronger through their friendship. Haegr taught Ragnar patience and wisdom. Ragnar showed Haegr that even giants could learn new tricks. What made Haegr truly dangerous wasn't just his size or strength, it was his understanding of warfare as an art form. Like a master chef preparing a feast, Haegr approached each battle with careful consideration of every ingredient needed for victory. His fighting style was as unique as his appetite. Where other space marines relied on speed and precision, Haegr used his massive frame as both weapon and shield. He could absorb tremendous amounts of damage while dealing out punishment that would cripple vehicles, let alone infantry. Enemy forces learned to fear the sound of his approach, the thunderous footsteps that announced the arrival of an unstoppable force. But Haegr's true genius lay in his tactical thinking. His size forced him to be creative, to find ways to use his bulk effectively in environments not designed for someone of his stature. He became a master of using terrain to his advantage, turning narrow corridors into kill zones, and using his massive frame to provide cover for his battle brothers. His weapons had to be custom forged to accommodate his strength. Standard Space Marine weapons looked like toys in his massive hands, so the Tech Marines created specialized versions that could channel his incredible power. His bolter was essentially a heavy weapon that he wielded one-handed, and his close combat weapons were works of art that combined devastating power with surprising finesse. Most importantly, Haegr understood that every battle was part of a larger feast, the eternal struggle between order and chaos, between humanity's hopes and the galaxy's endless hunger for destruction. He fought not just to win, but to ensure that there would still be something worth celebrating when the battle was over. Like all true heroes in the grim darkness of the far future, Haegr's story is ultimately one of sacrifice. The very qualities that made him beloved, his loyalty, his protective nature, his willingness to put himself between his brothers and harm, would ultimately lead to his downfall. The details vary depending on which saga you hear, but the core truth remains the same. When faced with impossible odds and certain death, Haegr chose to stand his ground so that his packmates could escape. His final battle was fought not for glory or honor, but for love. Love of his brothers, love of his chapter, and love of the simple human values that the space wolves represent. In his last moments, witnesses say Haegr fought with a fury that shook the very foundations of reality. He proved that size does indeed matter when that size is backed by an unbreakable will and an unshakable faith in what you're fighting for. His death bought precious time for his brothers to complete their mission, and his sacrifice ensured that the values he embodied would live on. But Haegr's true legacy isn't found in the battles he won or the enemies he destroyed. It's found in the lesson he taught about what it means to be human in an inhuman galaxy. He showed that strength without joy is meaningless, that power without compassion is empty, and that the greatest warriors are those who fight, not because they love war, but because they love what war protects. In the great hall of the Fang, they still set a place for Haegr at every feast. His chair remains empty, but his spirit fills the room, reminding every space wolf that they fight not just for the Emperor or the Imperium, but for the bonds of brotherhood that make existence worthwhile. Haegr the Mountain reminds us that in Warhammer 40,000, the most powerful characters aren't always the ones with the biggest guns or the most impressive psychic powers. Sometimes, the most powerful character is the one who understands what's worth fighting for, and never loses sight of the simple human values that make victory meaningful. In a universe where hope is rare and joy is rarer still, Haegr represented something precious, the understanding that being superhuman doesn't mean abandoning your humanity. He proved that you can be the biggest, strongest, most terrifying warrior in the galaxy and still be someone your friends want to share a meal with. That's today's Grimdark Bite. Next time, we'll be exploring another corner of the 40K universe where hope and horror dance their eternal waltz. Until then, remember what Haegr taught us, that strength without friendship is just another form of weakness. Thanks for watching the Lorelord, and may your feasts be as legendary as your battles.